Welcome to this tour of Planning Analytics. This overview has been designed to help inform you about the power of IBM Planning Analytics and will be particularly useful for those of you who have registered for the trial as I walk you through the key capabilities so that you can get the most out of your evaluation. If you haven't registered for the trial yet, there's still time. Simply head over to ibm.com/planning to sign up, and you will still get value from this webinar as you learn how IBM Planning Analytics can deliver speed, agility and foresight to all of your planning and analysis activities. First, we will examine the challenges that you are most likely experiencing with your planning and analysis activities, or in other words, what has driven you to evaluate alternatives. This will set us up for the next section. We will spend the bulk of our time exploring how you can get the most out of your trial experience, putting a spotlight on those elements that are specifically aimed at overcoming the challenges we discussed. Finally, I will spend a moment to outline how the trial fits into the grand scheme of things. IBM Planning Analytics is a comprehensive platform which can be used to solve all of your planning and analysis challenges, and I will summarise the value that IBM Planning Analytics can bring to you. I imagine that what has drawn you here today is that you are probably using manual, labour-intensive and error-prone systems, and many of the statements you see here should ring true. And these points, past customers have told us, can be characterised by a couple of outcomes. Firstly, the information that they are aiming for is not as accurate as it should be. They frequently experience data that did not match up with reality. For example, when comparing what actually happened with what they had planned, there is a significant variance. To put it another way, they were struggling to get reliable predictions of forecasts. And secondly, it takes too long to get things done. With the need for agility being ever greater, our past customers were looking for quicker ways to respond to new business opportunities, and they found that their existing processes were a barrier to involving the right people more frequently to tackle new challenges. So it comes as no surprise to me to learn that many of our customers come to us having used a spreadsheet-based process to tackle their planning and analysis challenges, which makes sense as spreadsheet solutions are pervasive, easy to get started with, and offer a lot of initial flexibility. However, once the initial requirements grow from simple input and analysis, spreadsheets continue to disappoint, and our customers have described their past frustrations in a number of areas, like the ability to scale, in the amount of detail they want to plan at, or the number of people that contribute, or the frequency at which they update plans, or consistency, ensuring that the same assumptions are used by everybody and that common business drivers are employed, which can be easily understood by everyone that is contributing. Or maybe a real-time view, not only of the data, in other words, updating the whole plan as soon as someone enters their data, but also the state of the process, highlighting who is actively participating, who has finished, and who needs a nudge. We might be talking about dimensionality, where organisations have to compromise on the breadth and depth of analysis. For example, it's a simple process to build a sheet that captures, say, product sales over time. But as soon as you want to add region, channel, category, customer type, and explore and plan by any of those valid business dimensions, well, that's where models get messy, complicated, and errors creep in. And finally, the mechanics of managing the process, updating the business model, sending out new versions, rolling out to new people, bringing in detailed actual information, aggregating the data. Well, these time-consuming activities mean that organisations struggle to keep up the pace that is needed in order to make effective decisions about future performance. So let's dive into a live demo where we can see the IBM Planning Analytics trial in action. So here we are in the IBM Planning Analytics trial. In this initial view, you'll see all of the projects that you have access to. Of course, when you first start, it will be empty and you'll just be presented with the Start Planning tile. A couple of points I want to highlight on this screen here. You can always come back by clicking on the IBM Planning Analytics trial logo. This will bring you back to this project screen. And you can see your account details here by clicking on My Account icon. I'm going to start by choosing Start Planning. And what you immediately see is that you're presented with the opportunity to choose some templates. Now, templates are use cases that map to key business challenges, and I'm going to click on the Expense Planning tile. We get the opportunity of giving this a name, so we can choose whatever name we want, and provide some description about what it is we want to achieve in this trial. I'm just going to start planning now. So what's happening is IBM Planning Analytics is creating our own space on the cloud for us to do expense planning. So first of all, I want to take you on a quick tour of the interface so you can get familiar with how we can work with the IBM Planning Analytics trial. At the top we have an area that's related to our project and our account. You can see here's the name and the description, which we can edit just by clicking on the pencil icon. We can see who's involved in this particular project. Now we haven't shared this yet, so it's only myself. And we can see details about the consumption and how much we've used. So at the moment we do have sample data in there, so we have 247,000 cells out of 1 million that are filled. You can see some other items here, so you can see my account, and we'll come on to some of these other items as we talk about how you can get help. So moving down, you can see the guide. The guide is an important part of the trial experience because it will walk you through the use case. It will set you up and give you an understanding of how this template has been constructed so that you can get the most out of your trial experience. On the left hand side here we see a navigation area which allows you to select certain items. So we're at the project level. I could go back home, and that's exactly the same as clicking on the IBM Planning Analytics trial logo at the top. It will take us right back to the beginning. I can see the team that's involved in this, and I can look at the objects, which we'll explore later on as we delve into using the trial. The important part here is in the middle. This is the workbook, and this area is where all the action takes place. This is where we'll interact with the books, we'll explore, we'll plan, and we'll set up the things that we need to set up. Now I'd like to take a moment to talk about how you can get help and assistance so that you get the most out of this trial experience. I'm going to start with the guide. On the top here you can see the signposts. This will help you to hide or show the guide at any time. You can come up here and click on this and it will either show or hide the guide. And the guide is useful because it walks you through each of the steps and will actually direct you to the right place. So you can see here we can expand the various items. To start with, there is a tutorial that describes, in this case, the template. All of the templates have this, and it's a good way of getting set up and familiar with the template. You can see as we expand the items here, we get an outline and we can view some very specific steps. So just go ahead and click on that and you'll see some recommended steps that we can walk through. So in this case, you can see there's a video tutorial which will review the template. And then what it will do is allow you to go through the different elements step by step. So in this case, I could go and take a look at the versions or standard phasing or review expenses. And I can look at that by simply clicking on the drop down there. And you can see this will allow me to examine the expense types. And by clicking on go, I'll go directly to that area. So as I said before, this is quite useful because at any point in time, if you're lost, you can come back here. If I've finished with the model, I can go back up and then go on to some of the next steps. Another area of help that you'll find useful is the documentation, and you can get to that by clicking on the help icon at the top here. And what you'll see, there are a number of areas that you can go to. I want to go straight to the help. That's probably the most obvious place that I might want to seek assistance, and I can search for individual items. So let's just type in book, and I've got a load of topics that I can actually select. Returning back now to this screen, another area that I want to show you here is the community. So again, clicking on the help button and going to the community will open up a new web page. And this is a public community where you can ask questions, seek help, look for articles, blog posts and videos. So you can see here it takes you straight to the welcome page. You can see there's some areas already introducing the trial experience, getting started. You can dive into some of the essentials if you want to. You can go and explore some of the template videos, and indeed you can go to the trial forum and start asking some questions. So again, I urge you, if you've got some challenges or questions or experiences you want to share, by all means go ahead and join the community and let us know. So when we first enter a template, we are given a default view that shows us the available books. Now, books are the mechanism that we use to show data, to show visualizations, to guide our users. It's the main area that we will explore. And of course, you can go ahead and click on any of these tiles to open the books. What you might find useful though is to use the guide here, in particular display and execute. see what happens when I expand that. I can view the steps, and this will guide us through in the right order. So it will show us the way in which we've set up this template to answer this particular business question. Now, of course, what I could do here is I could go ahead and actually go straight into one of these items. If I choose here to use an analysis of expense performance, I can click on Go. Equally, I could just click on the tile itself, or I could go to the navigation and expand the book section here and choose to do analysis on expense performance. They all have the same impact. If I click on that, it will open up that book. So I'm going to hide this pop out by clicking on the books there, so I get the full screen. And what you're seeing here in the book is the ability to navigate step by step through the different analysis areas. So I can do that by clicking on the individual tabs up the top here, or in this case we set up the book with some buttons that take us right to the appropriate area. I'm going to go direct to the analysis area here, so I'm going to click on here, and you'll notice we've changed to the analysis tab. So what you're seeing here should be fairly familiar to you. What we have is a table where we've got a time scale at the top, and we have some expense items, in this case here as the rows. So what I might want to do actually is slice and dice. So instead of using the expense categories, I might want to do this by organization. So let me just grab organization and move that over expenses, and you can see we've just replaced one dimension for another. So the dimension here is just a view of our business, and you can see now that we're looking at our total organization, and we can see the different levels here. So I can choose to collapse back office by clicking on the collapse sign, and again with middle office, so I can focus my attention here on the front office. So one of the elements here of the IBM Planning Analytics solution is that we can drill down into the elements that really are important to us. Again, we can do that across multiple dimensions if we want to. So again, if I was wanting to look at a summary of 2015, I can collapse 2015, and now I've got 2016 alongside Q1, Q2, and so on. Now it might be that I find here, for example, this total level is not important to me. So what I could choose to do here is actually right click on this as a column header, and I get some options. So I urge you to explore some of these options here. In this particular case, what I want to do is I want to hide this because it's not really relevant to my analysis. Equally here, what I might want to do for the organization is expand this out, because I might be interested in all of the organizational elements. And what I'm going to do is click on these little two bars here, and this is going to apply to all of the rows. And what I want to do here is I want to hide all the totals. So what I'm interested in are actually the detail items. So by clicking on this, you'll see that what we get are just the organizational areas, and I can start exploring quite quickly and easily. Now again, what I might want to do is just reorientate the view somewhat. I'm going to reduce 2016. And what I can do here now is I might say, well, let's take a look at the expenses by department. So again, you can see just by dragging and dropping how quickly the solution starts reorientating the view. Again, I'm going to take the same step here of hiding all the totals, so I can quickly and easily get view of the expenses for any given department, for any given expense group. That might be that I want to explore this a little bit further. So for example, what if I wanted to explore the highest salary cost? I can do that again by clicking on the column header here for salary, right clicking, and choose sort descending. So again, lots of options for you to get the view and drill down into the detail that you want to drill down. And I can see here that sales, direct and indirect, have the largest salary cost. So I'm going to go ahead here and remove that sort. So I can just go right click on that and choose clear sort. What I want to do instead now is I actually want to examine this year by year, so years side by side against each of the departments. I can simply do that by dragging the time element here and putting it right next to organization, not over it but next to it. And you can see what it's done is it's nested that information. So for each one of the departments, I can see 2015 versus 2016. And you can see I still have the ability to drill down into 2016. I'm expanding that level if I want to. I'm going to collapse that again because it's a more useful view. And of course I can then go ahead and move this around. So if I didn't want it that way and I wanted nested by date first, let's move that to the other side of the organization, and you can see how that's just flipped that around. So the final thing I want to do here is show you how you can create your own calculations in the grid. So I'm going to start by just moving the time out here for the moment. That's not handy for us. We'll just simplify the view. What I might be interested in is actually seeing the variance between the costs of sales direct and sales indirect. And I can do this directly here by just selecting, I'm just choosing the shift button as I select both of those, right click, and again I get some options here. One of those is to create a calculation. You can see that down the bottom. So if I go ahead and create a calculation, it gives me some pre-built options, so I can actually give this a name. So I'm going to call this direct versus indirect variance. And it has some logical sums that we might want to apply here. So I could do a percentage type. In this particular case, I'm just wanting to see the variance, so I'm just going to choose this item here. So I'll just choose OK. It's just a simple subtraction. And what I've created here then is a view that will be updated whenever I change the data here. This number will be updated immediately to reflect that new reality. So now I'd like to take a moment to show you how you can explore your model. So for any given template, you're automatically taken into this books view when you first start up. But I can quite simply click on this and choose to show particular items or everything. So what you're seeing here are representations of the data structures that we have. So we have the cubes that we use, that's our multi-dimensional structures to hold the data together, alongside our dimensions, that's the elements of the business, alongside the books that we've already seen. Now some of these items we can rename. So you can see here, for example, with the analysis expense performance, I've got some 3 dots. If I choose to click on that, I get some actions. I can choose to rename that. Indeed, I can make a copy of that if I want to, so I can start editing that, and you do have the rights to do that with this trial. We have some ability to rename other things as well. Now you can see here the cubes, in this particular case for the trial, you can't rename them. But if we want to take a look at the dimensions, I can do that from here on the left hand side. Look at an individual dimension. It might be that I want to take a look at the organization. Here we go. That's one we explored earlier on. I'm going to click on that. I can click on dimensions to move that piece. You can see here is the hierarchy of the dimensions that we've set up as a sample for you. We can expand that so you can see that, and it might be that you want to change some of the names of this to reflect the nature of your business. You can do that at the high level here, so you can change total of organization indeed if you want to. Let's use R&D as an example. I'll just change that, and that might be called product development. This allows you to personalize these elements of the model so that it looks more like the way in which your business operates and works. Hopefully that should make this trial experience more familiar and more personal to you. The final element that you can start customizing and personalizing this is by bringing in your own data. So it might be that you have some sample data that you'd like to put in against some of the structures and the names that you've amended here. So you can go ahead and edit these dimensions so it reflects the data structures that you've got. And again, the guide, I should point out, will take you through the steps in the model section here. So it will guide you through how you can customize this so that it becomes more personal for yourself. What I'd like to do is actually focus on importing some information here, and I'll show you the shortcut to do that, so how you can get straight to that. I'm going to look at cubes, and in this case you can see I have a cube called actuals. I could do this for rates as well, for example, but I'll focus on actuals here. If we click on actuals, it'll bring up that data structure for me. So let's simplify the view here by clicking on cubes and collapsing that area. And what I've got here is a view of that data structure. You can see it should be fairly familiar to you. We've got our organization. Let's just move that across here. So I've got my organization by my times. I've only got one measure, which is the actual data, and I can see all my expenses here. Let's just go back to organization. You can see the update has happened already. It says product development. This is happening in real time, so you can really show and appreciate the immediate nature and the agile nature of IBM Planning Analytics as you amend this to your requirements. Now in this case we have sample data, but it might be that you have some actual data, and once you've customized this part and your expense items, you can extract some sample data that you'd like to use just so you can validate how this is working and how the data flows. And one of the ways you can do that is by importing, and you can do that at any point looking at this grid item here by clicking on this little box here, which will show you a little toolbar. There's lots of actions and we'll explore this later on. But the one thing I want to highlight here is this icon where we have an arrow pointing in, and if I hover over it, it shows you that it's import. So go ahead here and you'll have the ability to choose a delimited file like a CSV file or a tab limited file, any kind of flat file, and map the data that you have in your file to the data structure. So what you'll see there represents the sample of information that you want to use. So it becomes a bit more real and personal to yourself. So I'd like to spend a few moments showing you how we can start entering information into our model. Now this is a driver-based expense planning model, so we've set the model up with books that provide specific forms for our users to complete. In this case it's the expense forecast. So if I click on that, it'll open up the forecast. So what we see here is some guidance. We can enter the forecast and then have a summary. If I go to the forecasts, it'll take us immediately to the appropriate tab. I could have clicked here, of course, if I wanted to. Now you can see here I have the option to choose the organisation I might be planning for. So in this case we're using the drop down as a filter to say I want to select a particular organisation in this case. So we can interact with a form in this particular way. We can look to interact with specific expenses. So in this case I'm going to go ahead and look for professional services. Now as this is a driver based model, what we've done is created some of the intelligence behind this so that all we have to do is enter information around key drivers, and the model will then go and calculate those expenses. Now in this case there are some defaults, and that's what the guide would take you through, what those defaults are, and you can change some of the default settings if you want to. In this case we can see that professional services uses a last year adjusted method for entering information. So we can see the form here on the right has changed, so that what I can do is go ahead and override some of the data here for the rest of 2016. So in this case I might want to make an adjustment of, let's say, $50, and I can go ahead and make some of those manual adjustments if I want to. So I'm just going to enter $60 in this particular case, and you can see immediately it's having an impact here and totaling that for us. If I wanted to override this particular method for this organization, I can go ahead and do that. So what we've created here are the ability to use some of the drop down buttons, and we can see here it says yes, I do want to override this default method, and this opens up then the selection here on the left hand side where it says, okay, well how do I want to go and calculate the expenses? What's the method I'm using? Again, this is how we've modeled this particular expense planning driver based model. Of course there may be different ways to enter this depending on how we set that up, and as you explore the templates you'll see various mechanisms for entering data. In this case we've got some choices here, so we could for example say, well there's multiple elements to some of the professional services here that we're engaging in, so I could do by line, and you can see here the other drivers here remain blocked out. I can't enter details into that because it's not relevant to this input method. What I do have here though is a form that's automatically updated for this particular method, so I could actually say, well by line I think that we're going to be spending on some particular professional services, maybe it's audit services for example, 500, and I'm going to use the down pipe here just to say I want that to go all the way down throughout the year. That's something we're going to pay for throughout the year. There might be another item that we do, it might be some consultancy that we're engaging in that we just do that periodically, so let's just do 600 here. I'm just going to put it at the beginning of some of the quarters. And I'm just using my mouse or the keyboard to navigate around, and I can just press enter, and you can see here that's summing some of the items up for us. So in this case we are using the driver based aspects of this model to enter details exactly where we need them. Now in some of the other templates that you'll see, we won't use drivers in this way. We might just enter data directly into a form or a grid, and that's a very familiar paradigm for many users. In this case what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up one of the cubes directly. So I'm going to go to the left hand side here, click on cubes, and I'm going to choose the actuals. I'm just using this as an example. Typically we'd want to import actuals, and we know how to do that, but in this particular case I'm just going to show you how we could overwrite that. It might be quite legitimately that you've seen that some of the actuals aren't correct and you want to make some amendments. So here we see some actuals here. I've got this view orientated by expenses. You can see I have an organization filter at the top here, so I can go ahead and make changes to the organization. I could go ahead and look at finance, for example, and as we've seen before, this will go ahead and update. Now let's go and look at some of the professional services lines for 2015. You can see here that we have a value of 3,101. 45 for Q1. It might be that I know that that's not quite correct. I can go ahead and enter data in the grid in this particular case. So we can see here for March 2015 I might actually just go ahead and enter 2K, and it will recognize that as 2000. And of course what it does in real time, it updates the value here. One of the other things that we can do is actually prorate values, where we enter data here at a detailed level, at an aggregate level, but we might want to hold some of the details. So in this particular case I'm going to right click on March 2015. I'm going to go ahead and hold that value, so it's going to make sure that it retains that 2000. And what I could choose to do here is say, well actually I know that in Q1 in total we spent 4.5k in services, and look what happens to January and February's values. They'll increase in line with the increase of the total, but we've held here March 2015. Indeed, we can go ahead now and release that hold. We can do that at any level. So for example here we can see for Q1 I've got 4,500. Let's go ahead and hold that. And you can see now if I look at Q2, that's 775 with April at 206. If I go in up 2015's total, let's go ahead and make that 8k. Watch what happens to Q2. That goes up, and again that's prorated. So first of all, the engine in real time will go and prorate the value for 2015 across all of the quarters, and then go ahead and individually spread that out across the individual months. So that's a great way of entering data en masse. Now of course it might be that we have some other costs that we want to enter, maybe not in such a fashion where we're just spreading that across the board. You could see here we've got a facilities cost here for January 2015. It looks like it's a pretty flat profile all the way through. Again, if I was here just to put in a 12k, we should expect to see 1k in each of the months there. It might be that I have a specific value in mind. It might be that that this is correct for January 2015 and February 2015, but going forward I know that's 1.2k, so I can enter 1.2k here, and if I use the greater than symbol, that will push that in the direction of that arrow. So look what happens in April 2015 going forwards. You can see here that's pushed that 1200 right the way through to the end of the year. So a great way again of entering data directly into the form when we're not using a driver based model. What I'd like to show you now is how we can interact with the visualizations and indeed create our own. Now the templates of course come with charts and reports and workbooks that you can use for analysis, and this template is no exception. In this case we have analysis variants that we're going to explore. What I'd like to do here is to show you a best practice to give you the confidence to play around by yourself. Click on the ellipses. We're going to create a copy. So it's a copy of analysis variants. I could change them if I wanted to. Now the benefit of this is I can go ahead and make whatever changes I want to this book. If I get it wrong, that's fine. I can go ahead and delete that. But I'm going to go ahead and open this in this particular instance. So what we see here then is the ability to explore the variance in different expense types across expense types and organisation. I'm going to go ahead straight away to this tab here, expense type variance, and use this as our example. What you can see here is we've got some selectors at the top. We've got a chart here. This is a grid of information that shows us current plan versus last plan and a variance. And then we've got a simple chart on the right hand side that shows us the performance of the current plan versus the last time we did the plan. So I might want to start exploring with some of this, and indeed I can go ahead and do that straight away. If I just click on a chart, I get the little selector at the top here, go ahead and click on that, and you can see there's a chart option that I can start playing with. What I want to show you is how you might create your own books with your own visualization. So we'll build upon this. What we'll do is we'll go and edit the book, and that means we can start making changes that are permanent, and we can go ahead and make a copy of this expense type variance. If I click on the blue bar here, you see I get some options. I can choose to duplicate this. Click on that, and what the trial will do is create a copy just for you. And again, if I click on this sort of bar here and choose the pencil, I can go ahead and overtype that and say this is my analysis, and this is now my worksheet to go and start exploring. You can see again the grid and the chart here. Now actually each chart is a grid in the background. If I go ahead and show you that, what I want to do here is click on the little selector to get the toolbar up and click on the chart option. So if I click on the chart option, you can see there are a number of options, so you can go ahead and play to your heart's content. Again, this is your copy, so if you make a mistake, go ahead and delete it and start again if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and choose exploration, and you can see there's a grid. It's a slightly different view to the one on the left hand side, but the charts are actually powered by the data in the first place. And the great thing about the IBM Planning Analytics platform is that the system manages all of that data, so it doesn't matter how I orientate this view, we're still looking at the same information. Now you might be wondering, well, where are the expense types in this particular case? Again, if I click on the selector here, you can see there's a little arrow, and if I click on that on the right hand side there, here you can see we get the selectors. Now, for creating worksheets, often we hide them because it might not be pertinent, and we're trying to guide people in particular views, so we can choose to show or hide that as we see fit. In this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a column chart for this particular view where I'm exploring current plan versus last plan. And that's okay. You can see we've got a different type of view. It might be that I want to explore that even further, perhaps compare that with another view. What I'm going to do here again is click on this little selector to get the toolbar, and again that familiar duplicate icon. If I click on that, it will create a copy of that grid and the chart view and place it here on the worksheet for us. I can move it around and resize it if I want to. So I can choose to move that, and you can see the little bars here help us position that on the screen. And again, I can choose a different chart type. Let's just go ahead and make this a bar chart. So you can see it's a slightly different orientation of the view. And the final thing I want to show you with the visualizations is how we can change some of the properties of what we're seeing here. And you could do that by looking at the properties bar here on the top right hand side. Everything has properties that we're working with in the canvas. I've selected this particular chart. If I go ahead and click on the properties, there are lots of things you can explore, and the help will show you how to do that. But I'm going to show you here, if we just go to the visualization details, we can see there are different color palettes that we can employ. We could use to hide grid lines, we can hide or show the legend, we can choose the position of the legend, and so on. So go ahead, explore this, and when you're happy with what you've done, you can go ahead and close the properties box and just choose save, and that's created that copy for you in your copy of that particular book. The final step I'd like to explore with you is the ability to share your project. So we are able to involve other people by moving over to the right hand side and clicking team, or indeed we could do that at the top here and invite team members. It has exactly the same outcome. It asks you here to invite people, so I could say my colleague at company.com. I could write a little message, hey, check this out. In this case I'm going to choose selecting permissions just to give you an insight into what happens here. So when you're sharing this, you're actually creating an invitation for people to come along. And you can see here you've got my colleague at company.com. The default is a viewer. A viewer is someone who can view the data but can't actually interact with the data. A contributor is someone that can actually edit some of that project data. So they might be able to create their own books, put information actually into a plan, for example. And a consultant would be someone from IBM that's able to personalize the model even further. So if you wanted to see some items that are very specific to your organizations, you wanted to explore some specific calculations, you would share that with your IBM representative as a consultant. They are able then to go ahead and personalize that even more for you. And once you're happy with that, you simply press share. And there we go. What will happen is everyone that you've shared that with will simply get an email inviting them to register. If they haven't already registered, that only takes a couple of minutes, so it's really quick and really simple to get them involved. It is important to put the trial into the context of the entire IBM Planning Analytics solution. The trial is centered on giving you the experience of planning and analysis using a rich, interactive, web-based workspace to explore, analyze and plan using pre-built templates that address common business challenges. The trial is designed to enable you to personalize your evaluation so that you can easily see how IBM Planning Analytics could be put to work in your organization. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Of course, as you would expect, IBM Planning Analytics enables you to model complex calculations to ensure that your individual needs are met, meaning that you don't have to change the way that you do business to fit the planning and analysis solution. And with the addition of unique cognitive capabilities, your business is better able to understand likely performance, identify key drivers in your business, and automatically calculate best outcomes. As you would expect from a market leader, accessing data wherever it resides and in whatever form it takes is possible. We make it easy to ensure that your data can drive the plans and analysis for your business. While Microsoft Excel isn't a part of the trial experience, it certainly plays an important part of IBM Planning Analytics solution. We recognize that it is a great client for users to interact with their plans, so we provide the best of both worlds, the control of a powerful platform coupled with the agility of a familiar environment. And we make sure that the experience is as similar as possible with a common look and feel between the rich web-based client and the Excel client. The sharing options in IBM Planning Analytics go beyond the simple options that you see in the trial. We can provide specific views to groups and individuals, as well as workflow processes that enable you to build rapid submit approve cycles through every stage of a plan. And finally, we automate the process to ensure that your application is up to date, relevant, and robust. IBM Planning Analytics helps to reduce the cost of current manual processes. By automating those, we will lower the time and effort involved in building a plan, performing analysis, and exploring scenarios. By removing the error-prone manual processes that are inherent in spreadsheet-based activities, organizations are able to focus on getting better information that's more timely, more accurate, and more relevant. And the result is the ability to quickly and effectively support your business to keep pace with the changing needs and adapting plans as soon as circumstances require.